Look, welcome, councillors, and can I just say to Councillor Day, thank you. She specifically asked if I'd like to chair this, and I said, yeah, I will. Oh, look, thank you. Yeah, I will do. So I appreciate that. Thank you. We'll start with the karakia. Whakatakata hau ki te uru, whakatakata hau ki te tonga, kia mākina kini ki uta, kia mātaratara ki tai, e aki ana te atakura. He tio, he hoka, he hauhu, ti he Māori ora. Thank you. I would normally have stood, but given that there's only two of us actually in the room, it would have been a bit odd. Okay, apologies. Now, I think we do have apologies from Councillor Young, or at least we'll take it as apologies from Councillor Young. Any others, Tisha? No? Okay, so just apologies from Councillor Young. I can see Councillor Paul there. And Councillor O'Neill, not here yet, or she's coming online. Okay, right. So just move apologies from Councillor Young, seconded by Councillor Foon. Thank you. Can you vote, please? Is Councillor O'Neill online? Is Councillor O'Neill online? Yeah, okay. Councillor O'Neill, can you vote, please?
She's voted. It's got a green tick.
Ah, okay. Well, it hasn't come up on our device here. So, okay, cool, done. Right, thank you. Right, thanks for that. Conflict of interest declarations, are there any? I don't hear anybody saying that there are. Confirmation of the minutes. Now, actually, Councillor Day, would you like to move these because you were chairing those that panel hearing? I think is that correct? 24th of March.
Yep.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Foon. Thank you. Unless I'd have to look behind me. Okay. Seconded by Councillor Foon. If you can vote, please. Right, thank you. Okay, there are no items not on the agenda and there are no requests for public participation, so we'll go straight to the general business. We've got a break at 11:55 to 12:30 scheduled for lunch. And I am told that there will be some lunch here. Now, given that there's only a small number of people here, we will invite any members of the public who are here to join us for that. Okay, so first up, we've got Sandamali Gunawaradina and Gerald Earl from the Property Council. Submission is on page 10, and you've got 10 minutes, and you're joining us online, so welcome. If you want to leave any time for us to ask questions, we always appreciate that. Right, good to see you there. Right.
Hello.
Okay, and we'll give you a call when there's about let's say about 3 minutes to go.
Right, great, thank you very much. So kia ora koutou. Good morning, councillors. Thank you very much for having us here today, both Sandy and myself. My name is Gerard Earl and I'm the chairperson for the Wellington Committee of Property Council. On behalf of Property Council, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. I'd also like to introduce Sandamali, our advocacy advisor, who's assisting today and will be able to help with questions should there be any at the end of the submission. Property is the fourth largest industry in Wellington, and property provides a direct contribution to GDP of $4 billion or 10% in employment for roughly 20,640 Wellington residents. Property Council connect property professionals and represent the interests of 134 Wellington-based member companies across the private, public and charitable sectors. In terms of our sustainable business careers and pathways, so the strategy proposes to achieve sustainable business and career pathways. Among the many challenges businesses face, including the impact of COVID-19, we cannot agree more that experience and our
Sorry, Gerard, you might have to say that little bit again. You've frozen on us. You cannot agree more was about as far as we got.
was it.
Sorry about that. We'll stop the clock a bit there for you too.
But among the many challenges businesses face, including the impact of COVID-19, we cannot agree more that businesses require easy access to people with skills, experience, and knowledge, as this drives productivity and innovation. Our members are facing high levels of skill shortages across many industries, including construction, and we are pleased to see that this has been highlighted as a priority. We encourage the Council to collect data around skill shortages and to present this to government, as this can be used as a tool to encourage more action in this space by government. Transitioning to a circular economy. In relation to a transition to a circular economy, we support co-created business sector plans and sector transition programs. However, this can only be feasible if the Council work alongside businesses to understand how these programs can be successfully implemented. We do not believe that refreshing Wellington City's branding is required to improve the well-being of the city. In order to truly achieve this, the financial burden businesses face must be reduced. The rating impost to businesses, increasing costs of insurances, skills shortages alongside uncertainty in respect of future seismic requirements, and importantly, the funding of Let's Get Wellington Moving is not supporting existing businesses or attractive to new businesses. In respect of a revitalised and regenerating city, we support creating a built environment that is safe, attractive, climate and environmentally friendly. Over the last couple of years, through the guidance of our members, we have seen our advocacy focus towards improving sustainability and resilience within the sector. We support the need to reduce emissions within the building and construction sector and acknowledge that there is a lot of work required from central and local government and the private sector to achieve these goals. It is important to note that the private sector may not have the capital to spend without careful consideration. We urge that there are ongoing conversations with private sector to deliver on these objectives. It's also important to note that changing behaviour through the Council's zero carbon circular economic strategies is not the most effective way to achieve zero net carbon emissions by 2050. The emissions trading scheme determines the country's net greenhouse gas emissions, and without the government tightening the cap more, we are a long way from achieving our goal by 2050. In respect of a business-friendly city, in order to see businesses thrive, we strongly believe that the best way to do this is by reducing financial pressures on businesses alongside increasing their opportunities for growth. Businesses are already facing an increased multitude of costs, with further costs also to be implemented. If adopted, the proposed increase to the ratings differential from 3.25 to 3.7 will be the highest rating differential in the country by a long margin. In an age of technology and with a shift to digital offices and working from home, Wellington risks losing any competitive edge it once had. It is time for councillors to decide what it is they want Wellington City to be. Do you want the private commercial sector within the CBD, or do you want them in neighbouring regions or move to Auckland? In order for Wellington's future vision to be successful, we need policies and regulations that provide certainty beyond the 6 or 12-month period. We need some consistent rating policies without continual out-of-cycle increases. We also need the Council to encourage more of its staff back into the CBD and to encourage central government to do the same. In summary, we support the overall direction of this strategy, but recommend that it be implemented in coordination with other council plans. We recommend that the council have ongoing conversations with the private sector to fully understand the practical implications of the strategy. Thank you. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Gerard. So, councillors, any questions? Or I'll ask one if nobody else has got one. Councillor Fern? Oh, okay, right. So, look, one question, Gerard, the issue around rating differential. So the shift there was simply to keep the dollar number effectively the same proportion as it was prior to the differential shift. In other words, if the rates have gone up by 8.5%. They've gone up by 8.5% for the residential sector and for the commercial sector in terms of the proportion paid. Isn't that what you'd have budgeted on, or would you have expected effectively a windfall gain, as it would have been if we hadn't shifted the differential, because it would have meant that the residential sector paid more and the commercial sector paid less of that increase anyway?
Yeah, I think when you look at the, I don't think windfall gain is necessarily the right term to use.
Maybe it's not, but
ultimately the windfall gain comes from the increase in capital values, and that's how our ratings policy is determined by those capital value increases. So essentially, the rating imposed upon a commercial ratepayer is greater versus the capital value than it is on a residential ratepayer. And I guess what we can't see in this sector is any increase in the services that the commercial sector receives versus the residential sector, despite the fact that the capital values have increased considerably more in the residential space. So essentially, it's a bit of a grab back to the commercial sector to keep that 60-40 split across that split of rates, despite the fact that in effect, the capital values, the very tool for determining them, have increased considerably more in the residential space.
Thanks, Jared. Councillor Foon.
Kia ora, Jared. Thank you for your submission today, and that's really useful. My question is around Let's Get Wellington Moving, because I didn't quite get it all here, but if you could re-clarify. Were you just saying that you businesses or the property council or both do not see it as supporting the financial well-being? Is that
no, what we're questioning is the funding model relative to Let's Get Wellington Moving, Councillor. So I think there are broad elements of Let's Get Wellington Moving where we are absolutely in support of how we will achieve a better future for our city. There are some elements within the detail that we don't necessarily disagree with, and we're happy to be engaged in the ongoing consultation where that consultation has a true effect. But ultimately, it's the funding of Let's Get Wellington Moving which remains an outstanding matter that we haven't any certainty on and hasn't been provided yet by the council.
Great, thank you. And not to us. And do you have a preference of what that looks like for the property council?
In terms of the funding mechanism? Look, I don't think that we've got into that level of detail yet, but we need to be specific. Overall, we do support targeted rates as being a general methodology to look at these sort of big projects, where it can be very, very specifically outlined and very, very clearly seen. That tends to be more satisfactory to our members. I don't know.
Sorry, Gerard. If I can just quickly put in that we do have a working group on value capture at the moment, so we are looking at that as a possible funding method. So we can get in touch with you and talk more about value capture and how we're working with that.
That would be great, and I'll get the Let's Get Welly Moving team just to make sure that you're in the consultation rounds. Thank you.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
That will certainly be an issue for the long term, particularly probably for the long term plan next time around when the big funding questions are going to be raised. But they're starting to get front and centre now. Any other questions, councillors? Got another. I know there was a little bit of delay. Jared, can I just ask one other question? I'll go back to my original question just before we wrap this one up. It's just in terms of the drivers of the rates increase, most of them are things like big capital programs. So it's things like the big buildings, the St James's, the Takinas, the town halls, etc. The extra money being spent on infrastructure, etc. LGWM will be in there, and the other ones are all COVID-related costs and inflation and interest rates. So, when faced with that, how would you unpick the balance between residential and commercial sectors across those kind of things?
Yeah,
will it be any different to what it was before?
I think going back to the value, Mayor, I think.
Oh, you're frozen again.
Back again yet or not?
Yeah, you're back now.
Yeah. I think what we're not seeing is the clarity. I think, you know, you can talk to larger projects, but we're not seeing the value capture in amongst that. What we're not seeing is actually, you know, any targeted elements around that. It's simply a very simplistic tool to lump a lot of costs and a lot of very specific costs that might sit in one place or another into the commercial sector, and that's the reason why, you know, we don't support the movement of the differential. It's the reason that I think we see a lot of other councils moving away to reduce that, is to try and have that clarity around where that spending is actually being best attributed towards. You know, what we're not seeing from Wellington City Council with regard to this is that detail that says, yes, it is a commercial, or no, it's not, and it's actually more towards residential. And I think that's the clarity that we need to understand it better.
Okay, well, look, I'm happy to take that invitation up, Gerard. So yeah, we'll talk more about that. Okay, look, thank you very much. We really appreciate the contribution, and look forward to further conversation.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, our next submitter is Michelle Rush on behalf of the Environmental Reference Group. So, Michelle, welcome. Again, you've got 10 minutes. If you want to leave us some time for questions, we always appreciate that. We look forward to what you've got to say.
Thanks for that, Andy. Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Michelle Rush toku ingoa. I'm currently the co-chair for the Environmental Reference Group for Wellington City Council, which is one of your a body of advisory groups. And we'd just like to thank you first for the opportunity to talk on the economic wellbeing strategy draft. And first, I'd just like to say that overall we support the intent and the general direction of the strategy. And there are a couple of areas that we'd like to see sort of tightened or given a bit more weight and visibility in the like to say.
Hi, Michelle. Sorry, you're sort of dropping out as well. I'm wondering if it's at our end.
Okay, hang on.
It is at your end because it's not dropping out for us.
No, it's not dropping out for me either.
Right.
We can
hear
this really well.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I've just turned things up, so I'll hope. Is that better?
Yes, for the moment. Away you go.
Thank you. Okay, so the first thing we'd just like to emphasise is we believe the council could do very well through adopting a sustainable procurement approach to both providing for business wellbeing and also for bringing forward the need for building a more circular economy, for meeting the carbon targets that you set through Te Atakura, for safeguarding our water resources, air resources, and so forth. So we'd just like to say that we'd like to see a really strong emphasis through the economic wellbeing strategy on sustainable procurement. And the other thing that we feel is a missed opportunity in the document that we believe there's a big potential for is for you to look to partner with government as a resident of the city in efforts to do things like reduce the carbon footprint, and also to work on things like the circular economy. The government is, in your own words of that strategy, a massive contributor to Wellington City's GDP. You also have as a goal celebrating our status as a capital city, and yet the document currently is very light on actually working in partnership with government on that. And by this we mean government as a resident in the city. It has plant, it has buildings, it has workers. There could be a really great opportunity for a partnership there. And that's very different to lobbying government for certain things that we know you would need to do. So we really like to see that strengthened up. The other opportunity we believe is here, which we don't think perhaps pushed enough, is to link in business in Wellington is as concerned about the housing crisis as the council, because it cannot provide affordable homes for its workers. And you will hear that from many of the city's businesses. We believe that there's an already with the likes of Wellington Company. Housing, this is different to social housing, but more opportunities for affordable housing by looking at doing things in partnership, like you did with Wellington Company in the housing you've made available on long-term rent for people in the public sector. So I think there could be a really great opportunity there for you to look at where a business might be keen to invest in some property so it's got something to offer its workers. That's something we'd like to see you perhaps follow up with the private sector. And of course, there may be other NGOs who could offer the same thing. But I think that if we're looking at an economic wellbeing strategy, a focus there with the private sector could be helpful. The second thing that we just wanted to, the third thing, because that's what I'm up to now, is a bit more strength in the document on the importance of there being room and places for businesses to operate. And I'm just aware that people quite gaily talk about removing all the car yards from places like Adelaide Road. And while I understand that sentiment, I'm also aware that in the future, if you want people living in central Wellington, at some point, some of them will have cars, and they may be e-cars. And even if they don't, the people like the Mevos of this world will need to be able to access mechanics and places to get new vehicles. And I don't want to use this vehicle analogy too much, but there are also many other businesses that need places in town to operate if you are to service the central city as a suburb. So, and this is in accordance with, if you think about the 20-minute concept, where in an ideal world, to reduce carbon footprint and make cities livable, people can access all their full range of needs and services easily within their neighbourhoods. So what I'm really trying to say is make sure that in the thinking, and this comes into your district plan framework and also your bylaws, is that there are places in the central city for businesses to operate of all sorts, and the same with the suburban centres. Wellington really needs to be looking to rejuvenate its suburban centres, Johnsonville, Karori, some of the other ones, and give them enough critical mass by being able to be attractive to businesses to locate there, so that they can provide a thriving mini township for their residents around them. And of course, we know the benefits that will bring to lowering the need for commuting, to rejuvenating suburban centres, etc., etc. That also will help Wellington's resilience, because we are an earthquake-prone city. If we've got a range of thriving mini townships where businesses are located, we're going to spread the risk in the case of earthquakes or floods or storms and those sorts of things. So that's the other thing we really wanted to see, is a bit more strength on that. And finally, in regard to the circular economy, we strongly support that, and what that would look like and ways to deepen it. Again, making sure there are ways and places for the circular economy to operate. If we are going to get into that, we will need ways and means for capturing resources for reuse and the ability to process them. That takes space, and that the way that we do that needs to be very carefully thought about in whatever rule framework or strategic signals you are giving to those who may be part of that deepening. And in relation to that, the other thing we'd just like to see you strengthen in here is connections into the region on that front, because a lot of things to do with deepening the economy require scale, and therefore there's a lot to be gained by working more closely with Wellington Regional Council and regional other district councils, city councils in the area. So we'd like to see a bit more strength there. And similarly, you have got quite a lot of emphasis in here on skills and rectifying the skills shortage, but only one comment or one connection in there to the Wellington, I'll just get the title for you. the Wellington Regional Skills Leadership Group, which has just put out its own action plan. So again, we'd just like to see you working more closely in partnership and using those other forums to push certain things, so that Wellington City isn't trying to do absolutely everything itself, but it's more overtly operating with others also concerned with the same matters within the region. So that's what I'd like to say. Those are the main points, and just open for questions now from people.
Thanks, Michelle. We've got a couple of minutes left for questions. So are there any questions, councillors? Well, I'll ask one while I'm waiting, and then I'll go Councillor Phone after me. Okay. Michelle, there's a couple of comments there around tourism in particular, and more in the written work than anything else. What do you see as, I mean, there's obviously people still want to travel, well, I assume people still want to travel and go and see places and things like that, and there's value in people linking up with each other. What do you see as a sustainable form of tourism? What might that look like in your mind?
I think what we were wanting to signal there is that at the moment, I think we can all agree that where tourism had got to pre-COVID was starting to teet towards unsustainable.
Yep.
And so if we're wanting to look at what we want, it would be longer stay, because of course that's a lower carbon footprint. It would be people who are going to sort of perhaps spend more or do more in an area. And in the long run, obviously people arriving using more sustainable forms of transport. And at the moment we know that that's tricky. And so I think what we're trying to signal here is, let's start thinking about what sort of attractions help for that, and let's perhaps look at what we can do to be either incentivising or signalling that that's the sort of thing we'd like to see. There's no easy fix, however, I think that the more that we can do that, the better. And it may be around trying to promote as far as we can more sustainable transport options, for example. Yeah.
Okay. No, thank you. It partially does. Thank you. Not an easy one to answer. Councillor Foon.
Thanks, Michelle. There's a lot in there, but I think probably the one that I just wanted to dig into a bit more is the business is as concerned about housing, and that we've got more of an opportunity to work there. Are you aware or experiencing feedback from businesses that this is detrimental to their growth or well-being in themselves?
That I've heard it anecdotally from people, because they're having trouble getting workers. We've got friends who work for places like Xero, and then they will say we're having trouble. They'll sort of talk about colleagues or whatever, and so you get that feedback. I'm also aware from your own demographics that there's a gap in the demographics, and that's, I think it's 25 to sort of 40 age group, which is showing that a lot of people who are wanting to raise families are feeling like they can't necessarily do that. I'm still on Onslow College board, and I know that in the northern suburbs we've seen a drop-off in primary school in our contributing primary schools, and the anecdotal word we are getting is that many families cannot afford to be in places like Kandala, Nile, anymore, and we're seeing the numbers in those schools drop off. Again, that's anecdotal. However, you have got your own demographic data, which you quote in this economic strategy, showing that drop off in the family age of people, people who tend to be. And I just think even having the conversation on just the property businesses who may be interested in looking at partnering or doing something different to try and deal with this issue for them.
Thanks, Michelle. That's really useful.
Thank you, Michelle. Right. Okay. Thanks, Michelle. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Always good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to submit.
Thank you. Okay, that takes us to James Sullivan, who's with us in the room. James, nice to have you here. And we've got you down for 5 minutes as an individual, so individuals 5 minutes and organisations 10.
Yep.
So again, if you want to, we've got your submission here. If you want to highlight things and leave a bit of time for questions, that's always appreciated.
Yep.
And I think we're doing. You can take your mask off if you want to. It's up to you.
If I want
yep.
to, no.
Yep. Yep.
Good. Thank you very much for letting me speak. So in reading through the draft strategy a little while ago, and I think most of it's in the submission, the general feeling I got from it and the general interpretation I got from it was it's very medium and large business focused. It's all about helping businesses with skill shortages, with business friendly, this, that, and other things. And it isn't until you get to basically effectively the very last page where anything is mentioned about housing. And I know from my experiences of friends, of colleagues around my age or younger, the problem isn't so much the finding work. The problem is finding places to actually live in Wellington. And businesses don't exist without people. And this is sort of being, this is sort of even touched on effectively by businesses in referring to a skills shortage. If they can't find the people, how does a business exist? So to me, there's very little focus on this being an economic strategy that's actually focused on the people who live and grow in Wellington. There's sort of no point in having this beautiful, effectively this careers pathway when people come here, they can barely survive through university, and then the first job they get, they're like, cool, but I can't live here and actually then not be harmed by the housing here that can be afforded. I spent a lot of time in Wellington growing up, went to Wellington College, Victoria University, and all that sort of stuff. And even then, it was expensive to rent and especially as people progress through their careers and such and get to those higher remunerated jobs and such, by the point they're getting there, they've already left Wellington. And by that point, they've already set down roots. They've either got families or they've just gone, no, this is it, I'm not moving for a while. And by that point, trying to attract them back, may as well give up. So, yeah, in my mind, the strategy is very focused on the larger businesses, the established businesses. There's very little talking about how are we actually going to support people to exist within Wellington. How are we going to allow them to start businesses without having the risk of becoming bankrupt because they have no funds and suddenly they can't pay rent. So in my mind, there's a lot of nice things around, circular economy, innovation, all that sort of stuff, but very little about how can we actually support people to live here, to exist in Wellington? Because without the people, there's no point.
Thanks, James. That's very, very clear. Councillors, are there any questions? I don't see anything. I think you've made your point very clearly. I think just to try and help if I can, the intent was that we weren't going to try and reinvent every other strategy inside the. So there are strategies related to housing and transport and infrastructure and all the other sort of stuff that we weren't going to rewrite those into this particular strategy. But perhaps what you're inviting us to do is say a little bit more about them in there.
Yeah, it is very much to just. It's as important as the rest of it. That you can't have businesses, you can't have a city, you can't have a community without people. And of course, people need jobs, but if you're only focusing on one, you've lost the rest.
Yep. No, we really appreciate that. Thank you. I think it's very, very clear, and you've given us something to think about how we incorporate that.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you, James. Okay, I think we go back to online. We have Jackson Bradley there from Expansion New Zealand Limited. Hi, Jackson. Welcome. As an organisation, you have 10 minutes. And again, if you can, you've heard the way it runs. If you can leave a bit of time for questions, we always appreciate that.
Sweet as. You can hear me all good?
All good.
Listen, for over Lee went into Respawn here in Wellington, so a small business run by me and my business partner. So my thoughts on this, let me just pull it up, the economic wellbeing strategy is just that it's, I guess, as a small business owner, there's not a lot of support there within Wellington to give to us. And then also from the point of view of someone who's within gaming and tech and STEM, there's a small part in there about it, but I think there needs to be a bit more focus on it. So as a small business owner, I've had heaps of issues come up. I've had lots of advice that I've had to seek, and a lot of it is quite expensive. With someone who works every day, who's always doing things, you can't go to community law, you can't go to advice bureau because they don't deal with business, which comes at a pretty big cost. And when going to, say, Wellington NZ or going to Business NZ to try and get support, it's very slow and it doesn't really help much. Our mentors takes a while to get back. They've obviously got their own time and their own schedules that they've got to go to, but it is something that I think should be encouraged more, because we want to be pushing youth into business and supporting them through business, especially people who are younger than me. I'm 30, so you know, the people who are coming out of school, coming out of university, we should be trying to support them as much as possible into getting into business, because to me, business is, you know, what the previous guy said, without people, there's no business. So we need to be supporting new startups, new businesses getting rolling. And that, I think that's really helpful if there's some kind of advice within Wellington or some kind of place that people can go to and to brainstorm, whether it's a tech hub, whether it's something that's put on. For example, this last weekend, I was just in Levin running a 2-day event for gaming and esports, getting the youth in Levin into STEM. They've got a youth hub there, that's part of the library. In there, they've also got a tech hub, which is supported by the Horowhenua District Council and one of the funds, Provincial Growth Fund. Stuff like this would be really useful. Figure out. So I guess it's the exposure that would be really good for small business, because yeah, it can be really tough. Something that I've got to sort out myself. All my brains, like, I'm always going, and there's not a lot of time for me to get support. So it'd be good if there was easy access to get support. As for like gaming and STEM and tech, I know you've got your the creativity and digital innovation in there. It'd be really good to have quite a bit more focus on that. So as I said, just been in Levin, Horowhenua, Hutt City, and Manawatu. We're working with all of them to do gaming and STEM events constantly. So through COVID, it was really tough to get these going. But before that, we were running events every month, and now we've gone back to starting. So we're in Manawatu 21st of May for the Youth Week. I didn't see really much of that happening in Wellington. You know, we want to be promoting our youth and pushing them in the right direction, especially as we're moving into a digital age. I feel like there's very little, if anything, happening in Wellington for youth within those STEM tech fields. And the smaller regions seem to be doing it pretty well. So that'll be something I'd really like to see a lot more. And then also opening the doors for youth who are within these groups, and they want to put on things, they want to do events. I've worked with cosplay groups, I've worked with gaming groups. They all get shut down by their applications. They want to run a weekend event. They want to do something at maybe TSP, or they want to do something else. They don't have the skills to put together an application, but they've got the drive and the want to do it. But they'll get declined, and then they'll get put off, and then they won't want to do it. They won't be happy with the council, or they won't be happy with whoever's declining because they don't have the skills to put it together. So I think we've got a really strong community of youth within Wellington who don't have outlets, and that's something that I feel is really let down and should be really led. For example, our sports fields, we've got heaps of sports fields. They cost so much to maintain. What about why do we not have any gaming? Why do we not have any esports? Why do we not have any tech fields, places for people to go to? Just do innovation for especially our young people, and the gaming side, because that's so connected. You've got your gaming side and you've got your STEM fields, which go hand in hand, and it would be nice to see some acknowledgement from Wellington Council on it.
Jackson, thank you very much for that. I've got a first question up from Councillor Day, and then Councillor O'Neill.
Kia ora, Jackson. Thank you very much. That was really interesting. This is not an area I know a lot about, showing my age. So I was just wondering if you could tell me how many people are doing what you're doing, so that you know of, that are actually sort of, I guess, stepping into, starting up a business. What's happening in, I guess, in New Zealand, but also in the Wellington kind of area around this.
Okay, so in Wellington, it's pretty small in terms of going into business, because it's, firstly, it's not really supported. It's not seen by majority of people as something that is a form of like income or a form of success. Most people see it as gaming as just, you just do that for fun. Whereas we look anywhere else in the world and it's booming. It's in income, it's something that is massive, bigger than like any other industry. You put all other industries together and gaming will still top it. So for in Wellington, it's mainly me and a couple others. So like Sam Marsh, we've got Henry Lawton, who's doing Victory Up, which basically runs the high school leagues within New Zealand. So he's based in Wellington. Then you've got, say, in Rotorua, you've got DNA, Digital Natives Academy. In Auckland, you've got GameTan, but there's very little. And I think that's because the support just isn't there. There's, I don't want to say, we say boomers a lot within gaming, but that's really what it feels like. There's not a lot of support because a lot of people they're not open to the idea of using game as either a tool to learn or a tool to success. And that's where I'm trying to do. So, we're paying for rent here. We're trying to get people in. I've got schools coming in because they can't do anything at school. There's a small barrier of entry to get into gaming and into STEM and tech, but there's still a barrier of entry, and that's computer equipment. And yeah, a lot of the low demographic, low social, like say Porirua, Strathmore, they're areas that are really close to us in Wellington. I'd love to be able to do stuff with them more, just bring them in, do something for them. But it's just the support isn't there. I can't pay for all of that. I can't organize all of that because, once again, small business. So there's not a whole lot, but there's so many people who are interested in doing things. Gaming community is super passionate.
Thank you. I really love the fact that you've described what how we can support, and it would be worth letting you know that we are opening up a youth hub in Wellington, and it's being run by the Y. It'll be great for you to make a connection with them, because it sounds like there's a good opportunity there.
Yeah, a good point. Councillor O'Neill.
Kia ora, Jackson. Great to hear you bring this new and I think quite often not well represented in local government perspective. My question or partai is around the funding that's available to you. We often manage things in a creative an arts grant, but we don't have a lot of technology grants. So what grants have you seen throughout the country that have enabled some of these cool youth in STEM or youth in gaming and development?
Honestly, I would say there's none, because it side, maybe we've got like creating technology that will do something, but there's nothing that's really within. We've got to tap into trying to get into taking funding away from other creatives or taking funding away from other tech startups. And these could be startups that are they're doing something really good, but it's so different what we're trying to do. So there's not really any specific route to go down to get funding. So a lot of things like with the councils, they normally get funding through their through STEM and youth learning and promotion through there. For other groups, it's mainly for well-being, because gaming has quite a good impact on well-being. But there's no real path to go down. And I don't want to say, okay, let's make a fund just for gaming, because gaming has a lot of negatives to it as well, like most things. So it's quite complex, but I think there should be something there at least. And there's going to be passionate people like myself and others who are going to do it for very little. We're not trying to make a lot of money. We're trying to make a change.
Awesome, thank you.
Bradley, really thank you very much for that, and for giving us some food for thought. And I've got no doubt there'll be some more further conversation that comes from this.
Awesome.
And that takes us to Mike Herbal. I did see you online there just a moment ago.
Oh. Kia ora. Yeah, I'm Mika. This is
Mika,
Jesse
sorry,
with me.
my apologies. That's me not reading the writing properly. Mika, welcome.
Yeah, so I had some I had looked through the consultation for the economic wellbeing strategy.
Just before you start, Mika, can I just say we've got you down for 5 minutes, although we're a little ahead of time, so we might give you a couple more minutes as well. If you want to leave any time in that for questions, we really appreciate that.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Mika.
Yeah, so a couple of things stood out to me in the strategy. One was that there were some pretty big implications for how Wellington City Council intends to work with tertiary education providers and form sort of some pathways for students in the future going ahead. And so as a tertiary student myself, this was something that really piqued my interest. And so sort of looking into that and sort of the establishment of a potential town and gown committee, I was just sort of wondering like what this committee could look like, and whether this is something that council intends to do with just tertiary education providers. And if that's something that's for students, my question would be, or something that I think council could consider is, would it be worth having students represented on a committee like that? So a potential thing that you might consider there is maybe having someone from a student association or from the NZUSA on that committee to be a voice for students when council is making some of those decisions and having some of those conversations around career pathways for students. I do think that overall, like, it's a great idea, and having more things like internships is a really cool way for council to sort of lead in that space. So overall, I think that's an awesome direction, and I would just sort of question whether there could be some more involvement directly from the student body in some of those decisions. To sort of continue on those discussions of students and what some of these, some of the plan, some of those implications that it has for students, the sort of discussion around third spaces and revitalizing some of the buildings in the city and having more events and things, I think that these are all awesome things for council to focus on. I moved up from Nelson just over a year ago now, and I think I probably haven't really experienced like Wellington at its fullest because of COVID, and because many events and things like that were cancelled. I mean, I think there's like a real vibrancy and life and beauty to the city, which has been largely dulled. And to see council making some efforts or thinking about making some efforts to sort of revitalize that, I think is really awesome. And I think there's a lot of really cool potential there. One thing that I think might be worth considering going ahead with that is like I think back to the Thursdays in Black rally that happened last year, and thinking about how can those third spaces and how can some of these new public spaces, how can those be safe at night? And I'm sure you're already doing thinking around that, but that's something that I think would be worth considering. Yeah, and the final thing that I'll comment on before I quickly hand over to Jessie for some further comments is the circular economy and sort of the climate change focus of that. I think that's awesome. I think to give you a bit of a student perspective, for students, climate change is sort of this, and not just for students, right? This is for everyone, but for students in particular, and I think a lot of young people, it's just sort of like this existential like dread that looms over us, and it's in every decision we make. What career are we going to have? Is it worth, starting a family? All of these sorts of really big life decisions are all informed by this sort of like looming pressure of climate change. So seeing council thinking about addressing that is really awesome. And I do think that maybe climate change and sort of the considerations around circular economy could be more present throughout all of the areas of the economic well-being strategy and not just in one, if that makes sense. I think it's such a sort of pervasive issue that's in everything, that having it sort of represented in all those spaces would be really good. Yeah. Do you have anything to...
Thank you, Mika. Very well put. Jessie.
Oh yeah, sorry. Apologies for not being probably on the agenda. Mika asked if I would be willing to support him. My name's Jessie Black. If it's okay to share some of my thoughts, I'd really love to.
We've got a couple of minutes, but if you want to leave some time for questions, that'd be great too.
Absolutely. Yeah, cool. I just really wanted to talk about what Mika has said. As a student and as someone who represents youth really well, I think what Mika said is really worthwhile listening to. Particularly, I would say some of the things I work in the university and some of the ways of forming pathways for students to work in Wellington. When I went through that process a few years ago, I just remember being overwhelmed by large-scale networking events that didn't actually really seek to match people with jobs, but more was about how well can you present yourself in 5 seconds kind of thing. Having more opportunities to get work experience before leaving university would also be really helpful, I think. And so having opportunities for internships, paid opportunities that are across the board, and don't just go to that top tier of students, but also to the many, many students with excellent skills that might be outside of those kind of jobs that they might otherwise be not available, like currently they can't really get into. I think those would be really worthwhile looking into. The other thing I just wanted to really briefly mention, and I'm sure this is on your agenda, however, I just thought it was quite telling that the only place that Te Ao Māori and Tika Māori had a mention was under one of these, and I really think that that is fundamental to the entire way that you put together this plan, and I would like to just acknowledge that that is really important to make sure that those understandings are woven through the entirety of this plan.
Thank you both very much. Councillors, any questions? We've got about a minute left. I think that is really, really clear, and so really appreciate that, and we'll certainly take up some of those ideas. We haven't formed the university committee, the Town and Gown committee yet, but certainly Mika will put that into the mix, and so thanks for all of your input.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, councillors, that takes us to lunchtime, and we're due back at 12:30. So if you want to, we'll pause and then come back at 12:30. Cool. Nico's online?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Nico. Welcome. Okay. Right, we can get ourselves underway. Hi, Ella, as well. Right, okay, well, we'll get ourselves back underway. We've got Nico and Ella from the Youth Council. We've got your submission here, so if there's anything you want to highlight from it, that's cool. We've got you down for 10 minutes as an organisation. You're very familiar with all this. And so if you want to leave any time for questions, you know we always appreciate the dialogue afterwards. So over to you.
Kia ora. So yeah, I'm Nico. And so first of all, I'd just like to thank all you guys for taking time to hear our submission. So to start, I'll just give a brief overview of the Youth Council's kind of overall perspective on the economic wellbeing strategy. And then we'll take turns to talk about some of the more specific aspects. So overall, Youth Council is really supportive of the economic wellbeing strategy. We think that it places a really strong emphasis on the issues that matter to young Wellingtonians, such as climate change, career pathways, and creating a more inclusive city just overall. We do have one or two pieces of feedback, but again, overall, we think that the Youth Council is definitely in favour of this strategy. I'll pass over to Ella to talk about transitioning to a circular economy as our first point.
Kia ora koutou. My name's Ella. Sorry, I've got COVID if my voice is a bit scratchy.
Oh, no. Well, you're looking good for it, though.
I know. I thought I'd come so far. So on the circular economy, Youth Council fully supports transitioning to a circular economy. For rangatahi, climate action is at the forefront of our minds, and a circular economy will support us in reaching those goals and supporting sustainable businesses. Tackling climate change through a Māori worldview is essential to achieving climate justice for all. Further to this, Youth Council supports facilitating sustainable job creation in the Māori economy through procurement strategies that place Māori customs front and centre. Finally, Youth Council urges Council to further explore implementing donut economics incentives for businesses in the city, and suggests talking to youth-led businesses or youth-focused incubators about embedding circular economy principles into their business design.
Cool. Now I'll be talking about celebrating our capital city status. So Youth Council is really happy to see that the economic wellbeing strategy is aiming to celebrate our capital city status in a way that gives everyone, including young people through educational opportunities, the option to engage with Wellington's political and historical establishments. Wellington is really unique in that it houses all these government institutions, which we believe gives our city the capability to take a leading role in improving civics education for rangatahi all across Aotearoa. So making these places more accessible is really important. And another important issue the strategy addresses is working with queer and rainbow communities to help ensure that these groups are being fairly represented. So sharing that, they talk about economic wellbeing strategy talks about sharing their stories, and we believe that's a really crucial thing to do, and it also allow Wellington to strengthen its status as a queer capital, which will have clear benefits to the economy through tourism, and also just promote the inclusive attitudes are present within our city.
Is it, anyone else going to say anything else, Nico, or is that?
Yeah, I think
you just, it looked like you were looking for somebody else to pass over to there.
Yeah, I think Lee, was it you next?
Yes, I'm also part of the submission group.
Hi, Leandro.
Sorry, let me this up. The point I'll be talking on is how we're going to help rangatahi in this new economic wellbeing strategy. So the first aspect of this point is we find it really important to push openings and opportunity, not only for school leavers, but also postgraduates and a whole variety of youth kind of wanting to enter a new league of their lives. We think this is quite important because the rangatahi now are going to be the ones leading the city in the future. So medium to them to express their passions and expertise to say is quite important. We also feel that they need constant support within saying this from education or government agencies. We want to highlight the essentiality of uplifting them and leading based around their passions and their interests. The second point is business-friendly city. So the first aspect of this one is we find it important to help young Wellingtonians get into the workforce. So one way we feel like this could really be highlighted is encouraging them to shop at local stores or help them understand and connect with other local businesses. We also quite like the exchange of ideas with sister cities, just so we can promote business opportunities and opening around Wellington. And just lastly, to finish this up, we also just support this wholeheartedly in general. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, just on the dynamic city heart and thriving suburban centres, hosting arts and culture events throughout the city, including in suburban centres and the central city, is essential to assuring that we have a dynamic and vibrant place to live, and bringing up rangatahi through this and supporting young people when they're thinking about what they want to do in the future, and young people who are focused on the arts is really central to this. And Youth Council also emphasises collaboration with Māori for hosting events within the city as well.
Cool. And lastly, I'm just going to be talk briefly about the creativity and digital innovation. So, again, we're in favour of targeted programs that help support emerging companies, and we think these can, help level the playing field in the tech industry a bit, and also help, encourage young Wellingtonians to get involved in this industry. We did have a slight question about, there was a point about tax incentives to ensure our city is more competitive in the global film and gaming markets. We were just kind of wondering who these tax incentives would be going to. Would we be looking at like international companies or local creators of films and games, and a combination of the two, and just kind of see, which groups would be getting maybe a competitive advantage over others. And lastly, just the Youth Council strongly supports partnership with Mana Whenua and Te Matarau Māui in order to improve the opportunities available for Māori in technology. We really believe taking steps like this is crucial in order to uphold our part in honouring Te Tiriti o Waitangi obligations, and just to ensure that we have a digital workforce that is representative of our diverse population. So thank you. And that's our submission. We're very happy to take questions.
Kia ora, and thank you all. Right, councillors, are there any submissions, questions? I'm not seeing anybody who wants to ask any questions. Councillor Foon, you haven't got any either? Thinking. Yeah. Look, I'll ask one just while my colleagues are thinking about it. Just in terms of the comments you made around celebrating our capital city status, can you unpick those a little bit more as to what you would see being in that? Because there's a lot that we can offer for young people coming to the capital city, whether they live here or indeed are visiting here. So I just wondered what kind of ideas you had in mind, because we're doing a bit of thinking about that.
Sure. So I think what we're really keen on is seeing that making spaces like Parliament or these government institutions really open for like educational opportunities and stuff like this for young people, and just to help create the sense that young people are welcome in these spaces and they are valued just in that sense. So yeah, really just looking to make sure that everyone is given the opportunity to engage with these really important historical spaces.
Right. I don't see anyone else wishing to ask any questions. So look, thank you very much for your submission. Thank you very much for spending some time with us, and we'll take that into account as we look at finalising the strategy. So really appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Ella, take care.
Thanks. See you later.
Right. John.
Mayor Foster.
John, you know the score anyway, so go for your life.
Go for my life, right. Yep. Mayor Foster, councillors, officers, thank you for the opportunity to support the written submission that I put in. I understand in the submission process that sometimes council can be accused of trying to do too many things at too many different times, but I think there is the risk that if we don't plan for the short, medium and long-term future, then things actually get lost. Normally, the things that actually get shouted around in this room are the immediate concerns of people, and we do have some immediate problems, and we recognise that in the city, whether it's the housing shortage, affordability, let's get Wellington moving, shortage of employment, city vibrance. Those are all critical issues for the city, but they are today's issues that need to be resolved in the short term. What I really want to talk about is how pleased I am with the wellbeing strategy that we're starting to address some of these issues that are the medium to long-term issues that the city has, but also everyone in this part of the world has as well. And particularly, I'm actually not going to focus on the economic issues, surprisingly. What I really want to focus on, though, is education and then circular economy, because actually there's threads that are drawn between both of those. I have long thought, and I have to conflict of interest that I'm now working for Victoria University, so I put my hand up, but I have long thought that we have undervalued, the city have undervalued the contribution that our educators make in this city. We have 3 universities represented in the city. We have thousands of students who come to the city. A vast majority of those come from outside of the city, so they bring economic value to the city. They actually are coming to the city to experience what we have to offer. And I don't know that we've made enough of that from an economic point of view, but also from a skills and vibrancy and young, smart people coming into our city. I often feel we take it for granted. I think we take for granted we've got 3 universities. We take for granted these people are going to come. They come for between 3 to 5 years, so they're not short-term stayers here. They are really important to the GDP of the city. If you look at the educators, they are probably one of the largest economic contributors to the outside of the public service into the city. Do they get value for money from us here in Wellington? Do they get value in voice as far as the important role that they play? So I think I was delighted to see that there is actions attributed to working closer with the educators in the city, drawing them into and really making them part of the solution going forward. And then the other thing that I'm delighted about, and you know, Laurie and I have talked about this quite often, and I know that she attributes me to saying, well, where's your plan for the circular economy? Well, where was the plan for the circular economy? And the circular economy is more than just recycling. It's around us setting a benchmark for the city, setting a benchmark for the future. But also, if you draw the strands between bringing bright, smart young people to the city, they absolutely expect it. I was interesting to feed the feedback of the group prior to me, and what did they talk about? Education and the circular economy. Because for them, it's an absolute expectation that we have good policies around circular economy, that we demonstrate those, that we put in practice. If we want to keep bright, smart, young people here to fill the skill shortage gap, to drive the economy, then this has got to be a place where they want to reside, where they want to stay. Now, if we don't put into practice all the things and the things that they value, they won't stay here. They'll go somewhere else where those values are actually acknowledged, where those values are lived and those values are put forward. So that's really my plea to you, is I'm delighted that both of those are in here. I'm very happy to help and support going forward on both of those. Obviously, from an economic point of view, get some of these things right and the other stuff will fall out at the other end. Thank you very much.
John, thank you. Really appreciate that. Are there any questions, councillors? Councillor Thone.
Kia ora, John, thank you so much. Just in terms of the circular economy is relatively a new concept, although not in another way, but you've got some good experience. Have you got an example that you can see of a city around the world that has been successful and some of the outcomes that they've benefited from?
So I think I'd make two observations. One, on the circular economy, there are countries in the world that do the circular economy really well. Taiwan, for instance, is one of the countries that really practices what it preaches. It recycles 98% of its waste. Now, there are fundamental reasons why it does that. A, because it's not got a lot of landfill sites that it can use, and plus also it's in an isolated position. But that has forced it to address the recycling, repurposing of, and as I say, it has an enviable record of recycling. So, you know, it recycles basically everything there. Now, that is there are methodologies, there are ways that they operate that can be easily incorporated elsewhere. Now, I have to flag a warning. There is a cost to doing it, but in Taiwan, my understanding is that cost is levied at the new product, and the new product carries a levy towards the recycling of it when its life is redundant. So now that may be difficult for Wellington to implement. That is probably more a New Zealand Inc. Thing. So for instance, tyres, rather than having mountains of tyres stuck in some paddock catching fire, every new tyre that's sold has a levy that's put on it, and that then recycles it. Now, I don't know why that's so difficult personally, but, you know, so that's one example. The other thing, of course, is carbon zero accreditation. You know, the last organisation I was in, we were carbon zero accredited. It is a very simple process, but what it does, it brings social responsibilities to the whole team. It brings responsibilities to the organisation, and actually it resonates with the people you want to employ. When we were employing people and they knew we were carbon zero accredited and that we did what we did, it was actually another reason for them to come and work with us. So I think carbon zero accredited, we could do a lot more for that. I mean, there is always this debate about, yes, you have to purchase tree credits to be accredited, but let me say to you, it's not as simple as that, because what you have to do as well is demonstrate a whole load of actionable within your organisation. Now, that's the way you dispose of waste, that's the way you operate, that's, you know, all of those things. So I think carbon zero accreditation is something the council could be more of a champion on, and also help businesses facilitate and get to that point. And as I say, the examples of the circular economy, really, there are numerous examples globally that we could champion here in Wellington.
John, I'm going to take one more question because I really
I've
appreciate.
overstayed my welcome.
No, you not at all. I overstayed the time, but not the welcome. Councillor Day.
Oh, kia ora, John. Thank you for coming to share with us today. My partai is about the education space, in the fact that you're absolutely right. We have students who come and live here for 3 to 5 years. And my question's around, I don't think we're retaining as many of those in Wellington to stay here and work following their training. And I guess we've heard housing is one reason. Can you think of any other reasons why we might not be retaining the talent that we support through their university years, but not after?
How long have I got? I think one of the challenges is, as I said, a large percentage come from outside of the city anyway, so, and there's an economic factor that comes into play in one way. But I do think, you know, it's quite interesting that I've now entered the debate of companies say, I can't get skilled employees. They're just not available, I can't get them. And what we've actually identified is that they can actually get graduates, that the educators are actually giving them a good feed of graduates. What they're not giving them is experienced people, and that's what they actually want, is experience. So how do we bridge the gap between someone being a newly qualified graduate and being experienced? Well, simplistically, what we should be doing is both at the same time. We should be allowing students to be educated, but at the same time gaining experience with potential employers so that they do become employable when they leave university. That's one observation I'd make. The other observation is that, you know, that we actually understand what the job market wants, because if we understand what the job markets want, we can help tailor what the students are doing in their academic studies to make sure that they are fit for purpose when they actually come out. And again, I mean, I know, Wellington NZ does what it does, the universities do what they do, the employers whinge and moan that they can't get skilled workers on the other side, but, there's got to be some way of acting as a facilitator. How do we pull this together? And I think Council has a key role to play in helping facilitate that so that we actually, A, these people are fit for purpose when they leave university, A, they want to stay here because the values and the way that they want to live their lives is actually championed by Wellington as well.
John, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And I think that screamed things like internships, which of course is in here, but I think there's some real opportunities there to work more collaboratively.
And thank you very much. And again, happy to continue to make a contribution in a small way.
John, I've just been asked specifically for one more question. I will humour Councillor Foon on this one.
Well, I mean, we don't get John in enough to
No, we don't. That is true. So we're taking advantage here.
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
John, just in terms of that, young people and meaningful work, like you've really brought that, but what emphasis do you think we should be giving to that as we go to the future now and into the future, now that you're in the education sector and you can see that bridge between business?
I think making conduits between the interested parties, whether that's the city, the employers, the educators. It's facilitating conversations and discussions and conduits between them. Because as I say, I think there's separate groups, but I don't think they're drawn together well enough.
Thank you.
John, thank you. We'll look forward to some more conversations as we set up deepen that relationship with the university.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Okay, now we have the Sustainability Trust. I don't know if you heard any of the conversation we were going about the importance of circular economy. So if you did, that was all. Oh, yep, that was a yes. Okay, so we've got Polly and Liam. So welcome. We've got you down for 10 minutes. If you want to leave any time for, we've obviously got your submission here. If you want to leave any time for questions, we always appreciate that. So thank you, and thank you for the work that you do.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for having us here today. Sustainability Manager.
Tēnā koutou, thank you. Liam Prince here from the we are here.
So you're both fading in and out a little bit. Is that just because you're a little way away from your speaker?
Oh, sorry. We'll speak louder.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
We're representing WCC Valley today. We're an open and collaborative group of enterprises, advocates, researchers, and others. We're working to progress the vision of Zero Waste in Wellington, and our members are really at the forefront of.
So Liam, I'm getting the body language of can't hear, and we're struggling at this end as well. So how are we going? Can we?
Shall I try unplugging?
Liam's going to try plugging in his headphones and see if that helps.
Okay.
You wanna?
But we'll start the clock again. So.
Any.
Right, away you go. Let's test that. Can't hear at all now.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, so far so good.
So far so good? Okay. Shall I start from the top?
Yes, okay. That'll be fine, thank you.
Yeah, great. Cool. Well, thanks so much for having us here. We're representing Waste Free Welly today. We're an open and collaborative group of enterprises, advocates, educators, researchers, NGOs and consultants, all working towards the vision of zero waste for Wellington. And our members are at the forefront of building a circular economy for Wellington. So overall, we support the draft economic wellbeing strategy. We were really pleased to see a strong intent for change, shift from economic development to well-being, and of course, very excited to see the transition to a circular economy as a key outcome, and very much support some of the comments from the previous submitter. But our submission is focused on the opportunity for a circular economy, not just as an outcome, but as central to the overarching vision of the strategy. And we think this could help to tie together many of the threads both within and beyond this draft strategy. But just to briefly go back to basics, what is a circular economy and why do we think it should be expanded? Really, a circular economy addresses some of the most critical challenges of our time: climate change, biodiversity loss, waste and pollution. It's not about being slightly more sustainable or being slightly better at managing our waste. It's about turning off the tap of our consumption of the Earth's resources by designing out waste and pollution at source, by keeping products and materials in circulation for as long as possible, and by regenerating the tile or nature. A circular economy makes better use of the materials and energy that we draw into our economy, and so we don't discard materials and products in landfill or incinerate them, and also we don't need to draw new raw materials in to meet our demands.
So cities have a high concentration of resources, capital, data and talent spread over a relatively small geographical area, so are really well placed to drive the transition. Globally, cities are adapting circular economy strategies. In Amsterdam, their circular economy strategy aims to halve the use of raw materials by 2030 and achieve a fully circular city by 2050. Closer to home, we recently spoke with Greater Bendigo Council in Australia, who have appointed a circular economy coordinator. Circular economy bridges responsibilities across council and limiting it to one outcome in the strategy among many risks diluting the transition and not adequately addressing critical threats to our economy, society and environment. And we spoke to the head of policy at Zero Waste Scotland, who implements Scotland's circular economy strategy. He cautioned to make circular economy central to strategy to avoid siloed thinking. Zero waste enables a circular economy and supports waste and emissions reductions and a sustainable economy, but we really noticed that the waste minimisation and management plan hardly mentioned, yet this plan is going to be critically important for implementing zero waste strategies to help shift us towards a circular economy. The plan should sit alongside Te Atakura in how they relate to the economic wellbeing strategy and other core council plans and strategies. Circular economy must be an overarching objective and a lens for the rest of the strategy. This will strengthen it in line with the Council's 2040 vision, accelerating zero carbon and waste-free transition, and aligns with central government's direction where circular economy is a key goal in waste and climate change policy. So for us, the vision would become Wellington is a dynamic city with a resilient and innovative low waste, low carbon circular economy, provides opportunities for all and protects and regenerates our environment.
So zero waste strategies will help to make the circular economy a reality. So activities like reuse, refill, repair, repurposing, recycling, resource recovery and composting, they're all about keeping materials circulating in our economy to minimize waste and emissions and to generate enterprise opportunities. And we want to see support for this in the strategy. In our submission, we provide numerous examples of zero waste and circular business models and initiatives that could deliver on various council strategies, not just this one, from creative and innovative new products and services like Reusable, Washing Up Welly and Mevo, educational opportunities and career pathways for young people, such as the collaboration between KaiCycle and Papataiao, creatively using city spaces through programs like Repair Ed and A Place for Local Making that enhance access to low waste services, and many composting and urban farming initiatives that help build resilience at the same time as greening the city and enhancing biodiversity.
We really see council's role to be as a leader, partnering and collaborating with businesses and communities to support the transition to circular economy, where we're measuring success more broadly than just GDP. We've got to create equitable outcomes for people who live and work in Wellington with opportunities for mana whenua, social enterprises, other SMEs in the community. There are so many tools at Council's disposal to enable change outside of external funding, including co-design with the community, facilitating collaboration and procurement. Greater Bendigo, for example, provides collective buying for small business, for instance, milk delivered in reusable containers. And Auckland Council has used new social procurement models to put in place their resource recovery networks.
We want to see the strategy elevate opportunities for developing Māori business and enterprise so that engagement with Māori goes further than just consultation and incorporating Te Ao Māori. And we just like to acknowledge the new Tupiki Ora Māori strategy is a great way to bring together many of the threads and council priorities. And they really resonate with the vision of economic well-being with a circular economy at its heart. Indeed, circular economy is really just a new Western spin on an ancient concept of reciprocity and living in harmony with natural systems that are shared by many Indigenous knowledge systems, including Mātauranga Māori.
So we've given a lot more detail on the submission, but our main takeaways we'd like to leave you with are making circular economy central to the strategy, aligning with zero waste strategy, and using council's role to build local economy and achieve broader outcomes in our community. Really love to work with council on this. Our members are already demonstrating what circular business models look like in practice, and together paint a picture of what circularity could look like for Wellington and beyond if these models were supported, enhanced, and multiplied to become the norm. We are hosting a Sustainability Expo on the 8th of June at Parliament at the invitation of Grant Robertson's office. And this event's going to showcase all the amazing local action going on in zero waste and circular space in Wellington. And we'd love to see lots of you there and be able to continue this conversation with you. Laura?
Kia ora, thank you.
Kia ora, and we'll sort that one out in the diary, won't we, Councillor Foon? Cool. Okay, look, thank you very much. Are there any questions, councillors? Councillor Foon.
Probably just in that meaningful work for young people. So what you're telling us is that there's a strong rise in innovation, businesses and innovation in this space in Wellington. Do you see that there's a link between young people really wanting to make the change they wish to see in the world, and that is fostering that innovation, if you like?
Yeah, and I think that there often are sort of gaps in terms of what are those career pathways for young people to follow that are really going to help us build the circular economy at the moment. So the strategy has the opportunity to start to develop those and highlight those and give young people a really clear sense of, if I follow this pathway, I can be contributing to this new way of doing things, this emerging circular economy.
And some of the members of Waste Free Welly, like Non-Stop Solutions, Tiny Plastic Factory, they are young people who are setting up their own businesses and want to create successful businesses in the circular economy space.
And one more question: why do you think Wellington is a good place for, to develop a circular economy and make it at the heart of our economic wellbeing strategy?
Well, I think the creativity and the innovation in the city is really going to help support the implementation of circular economy business models. It can also has a high profile. So wouldn't it be amazing if Wellington could really...
Oh,
you've gone off. I can't hear you now, Polly.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're on mute, but I can't see you being on mute.
How's
That's
that?
better. That's okay.
Yep.
Good.
Okay, definitely.
Okay.
I was just going to say that, as I mentioned in our when we were talking through cities are just a great one. Wellington is over a small geographical area, which will make them identify maybe everyone wants to talk to you in Wellington, so everyone got collaboration, which is absolutely the starting point for circular economy.
Polly, thank you. I got a little bit of that, not all of it, unfortunately. I think what we'll do, though, our time is up. Really appreciate your submission, and thank you for answering those questions. And really thank you for the work that you do, and we look forward to doing some more work, because I think we have got, if you heard the end of the last submission, we've got some issues around government policy. We've got things that we can do. There's things we can showcase of what is being done and how people can produce less waste in their own life as well. So I really appreciate all that. Look forward to working together.
Thank you, and sorry about the technical issues.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Have a good afternoon.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that takes us to Raywin. Raywin, welcome. Raywin is with us in the room. So Raywin, we appreciate you being here. Thank you. It's nice to see you here in person. And you know the usual drill, which is we've got you down for 10 minutes. We've got your submission. And so if there's anything you want to highlight, but if you can leave some time for questions, we always appreciate that. And again, thank you for the work that you do as well.
Thank you. Mic's on. Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today, and my apologies for reading, but there's so much happening in Wellington City at the moment. I need to make sure that I'm saying the right things to the right people. So I speak, I guess, from a slightly different perspective to the other people that I've just heard. I want to talk about the people that are involved in the city, and especially from the perspective of the disability sector. So the overall vision and aspirations of the strategy look really great on paper, and it's really exciting to see and imagine how the disability sector might be engaged with and participate in this strategy. The concept is that unless there is a shift in thinking of the wider community about the full inclusion of people with disability, the existing gaps will remain for many groups. If you can refer to the stats that I gave you in my submission, there's many people from the sector wanting to participate in employment and the well-being of the city, and DPA, who also follow on from me, will also comment on that. So I thank Council for the increased opportunities for collaboration and co-design in the many current projects in Wellington, and strongly recommend that this continues to ensure that the strategy moves from an aspirational document to providing practical opportunities for all people living in or visiting Wellington. The diversity of people with disability could be better acknowledged as contributors to the economic well-being, potentially lifting economic growth of the city. People with disability should be seen as citizens, business owners, employees, consumers, ratepayers, artists, entrepreneurs, and also include people who could bring added value to the city and to the wellbeing strategy. There are many current barriers to inclusion, particularly in employment and housing and public transport, and so the rollout of the economic wellbeing strategy could be a driver for a much more equitable society. We fully support sustainable business and career pathways for all people, which will require a progressive breaking down and removal of all barriers, including physical, attitudinal, and monetary barriers. A city featuring universal design and accessible journeys will only be possible with continued engagement with disabled people. There will be many opportunities for this to happen by collaboration with the new Ministry for Disabled People, with DPOs, and with local people in the city with lived experience. Council has an opportunity to model inclusion of all people within Council and with their industry partners. To have a dynamic city heart and thriving suburban centres, the economic wellbeing strategy cannot sit in isolation from other planning documents. There are many projects that will impact on and influence this policy. The thriving suburban communities will house people and support growth. Providing transport and housing that meets the needs of all people will contribute to attracting a diversity of people to Wellington and the desired outcomes of the policy. Providing exemplary education that is fully accessible through from childcare to college and to ongoing education also needs to be supported in suburban centres, inspiring and encouraging children from very young age to remain in Wellington for further education and having great opportunities here in our city. Throughout the strategy, Council could research the wellbeing of people in the lower income brackets. For many of these people, the cost of living increases mean that basic wellbeing is a struggle, and without their contribution to the workforce, we would not have the vibrant and diverse city that we all aspire to. Many of the lower paid roles in the city keep the city actually going, so it's not always about the bright young things with the extended education. It's also about some of the lower paid roles and the diversity that we can have in our city to make sure that we do have a circular economy that includes and works for everybody. Diversity brings complexity, and disability does not sit in isolation. It's across all ages, all ethnicities, all gender and sexual identities. And the economic wellbeing strategy will impact on all of these people and has the potential to build true inclusion. Thank you very much for listening and your time today.
And Raywin, thank you so much also for coming here and giving us your time. So, councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Foon?
What is the gap, or what could this strategy provide to help bridge the gap between employment for those with disabilities and to become part of that richness in our city?
All of the things that the strategy proposes, like internships, connection with education. Certainly there will be people with impairments who do go through university and who become the bright young things of our city. So all of the things that we have in that strategy, just ensuring that the community is well aware of them, is engaged so that people can participate and are not excluded because it's all online if they can't manage an online thing right now. So I think that the strategy has everything in it that we would aspire to, but getting people to be included. Our 25% of the population that have an impairment should be represented and should be visible at all of these things that Council is proposing through the strategy. Thank you.
Yeah, Raywin, thank you very much. That was kind of the question line I was going to take, which was the practical things that we can do that would make a difference to people in different situations of, with different disabilities, etc. So that's kind of the things you're really referring to. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. Thank you. And please feel free to stay because particularly I think you'll appreciate the next submission as well. You're probably aware of which one it is anyway. So we've got Chris and Angela from the Disabled Persons Assembly of New Zealand. So welcome, Chris and Angela. I can't see you yet.
Kia ora tātou. I can hear you, Mia. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. What I can't do is see you yet. Now I can see you. Right. Nice to see you, Chris.
Yeah. Nice to see you, Mia.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Right, we've got you down for 10 minutes, and again, if you want to, we've got your submission here. If you want to highlight the things you want to highlight and leave some time for questions, we really appreciate that. And thank you for the work that you do as well.
Kia ora tātou, kia ora tātou, Mayor and councillors. First of all, we welcome the opportunity to submit on the WCC's Economic Wellbeing Strategy. We're pleased to see the Council has acknowledged disabled people's perspectives on the Economic Wellbeing Strategy document, including the barriers we face to our participation in everyday life, such as access to the physical and built environment, for example, the placement of signs and footpaths and lack of access to buildings. However, Council needs to better acknowledge the role that disabled people play economically as workers, consumers and entrepreneurs within the city's economy, and should actively facilitate the removal of any remaining barriers to doing so. As you'll be aware, if you've read through the submission, we do record the fact that in the Wellington region, only 22% of disabled people are employed, and 70% of those not working would like to be employed. And also, too, that these percentages include when adjusting for age, that 32% of Māori adults are represented in the disability data, and there is a high rate of unemployment amongst Māori and Pacifica disabled people. So there is a lot of intersectionality in terms of employment disadvantage. However, we do support the main aims of the strategy, and we welcome references made to the need to improve areas such as skills development and career pathways for disabled people within the local workforce. However, in part B of the draft strategy, we find that there are a few references made to other economic issues facing disabled people, let alone women, LGBTI+, youth, students, and ethnic peoples as other marginalised communities. These groups should be a full part of the economic vision for the city. We do note that within the strategy that is the case, but perhaps, referencing that a bit more would be very useful. We're very supportive of the economic wellbeing strategy's proposed outcomes, all 6 of them. We're also very excited to see, for example, that Council has made a commitment to supporting programs which will open sustainable career pathways into the Council itself through, for example, the foundation of the Skills Centre in partnership with Fulton Hogan. Stepping from this, DPA specifically welcomes the proposal, as was alluded to by Raymond from CCS Disability Action just earlier, to partner with the new Ministry for Disabled People to break down employment barriers. DPA is also working on its own program, and unfortunately, apologies from my colleague Angela Damare, who can't make it today. She's in another meeting. However, she is one of the program leads for Mahi Tika, Equity and Employment, and would be happy to engage in discussions with the WCC around its potential implementation in the Wellington City and Greater Wellington areas. We support a transition to a circular economy as well, as these are important to maintain not only economic activity in a way which balances the principles of ecological sustainability and social justice as we navigate climate change. However, in terms of objective 3, building a more business-friendly city, we believe that the barriers to disabled people accessing the local economy as consumers and employees need to be removed. Aligned with this, the Council's regulatory agencies should work in collaboration with us as disabled people and our organisations such as DPA, and reaching out to the business community and other associated stakeholders to progressively remove all physical and attitudinal barriers to the participation of disabled people in the local economy. In terms of outcome 4, we like around the being a centre of creativity and digital innovation. We welcome this proposal. However, what we'd like to see is that there would be more support to businesses and organisations to make their digital offerings more accessible and inclusive to a wide range of people and customers, and this should include to disabled people. And to this end, Council, through social procurement and other processes, should seek to support disabled-led and owned digital startups whose end goal is to remove the various digital barriers faced by disabled people, amongst others. And we also welcome the proposals under Objectives 5 and 6 of celebrating our capital city status and of building a dynamic city heart. We note that the strategy proposes the creation of experience precincts and activity spaces, which is something we'd welcome. However, we reiterate that any experience precincts or spaces should be universally accessible and co-designed in partnership with disabled people and our organisations. As part of this process, we'd like to see support for experience precincts and spaces and events created by the disabled community that celebrate us as the disabled community and also conveys that to the wider public. Chair, I'm open to take questions.
Thank you very much, Chris. Councillors, are there any questions, Chris? It's a very, very clearly laid out submission, Chris. So really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Can you tell me, in the absence of any other questions from councillors, tell me a little bit more about the skills centre with Fulton Hogan?
Basically, I see that the council has actually, I think your council has established internship programs with the opening of the skills centre. I think that it may have come from another submission that was fairly similar, which was the Wellington Regional Skills Development, Workforce Development submission that we made. It's very similar in tone. But anyway, I do understand that there is that skills centre. We actually do support any council that seeks to, as part of building up local economies, undertake to support trades, training and other employment programs, particularly those which are aimed at building up a skill base, and B, also giving councils giving opportunities to people, including to disabled people, to be employed within their operations.
That sounds good. How long has that been going for, Chris?
I don't know. We just mentioned it. So
okay.
Yes.
That's okay. We'll find out. Councillors, are there any other questions? Right. Okay. Councillor Foon is checking your website out at the moment. Okay. Look, I think that's very clear.
Very good.
That's very clear. And look, Chris, thank you so much. It's good to see you again, and thank you also for putting some pretty clear numbers there and some pretty clear aspirations.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Ka kite. Councillors, that takes us to the end of the submissions. So I'm going to move the resolutions, which are to. Oh, we've got to. Okay, right, Kieran, we've got to receive the report, but the report is simply to receive the submissions. So, is there anything you wanted to say? No. Okay. Cool. Thank you. Right. Does anybody have any questions? I didn't think you would. So I'm just going through the cheat sheet here, which is in front of me. So we've got to do that. Okay, right. Well, I will move the recommendations. Councillor Day, would you like to second? Thank you. Right. The recommendations are very, very simply that we receive the submissions and thank the receive the information, hear the oral submitters, thank them for their submissions, and if I can say. At the end of this process, it's really important that we go back to not just the oral submitters, but all the submitters and say what we've done with their submissions. You know, the key points they've made, and how we have responded to those when we finally agree the strategy. Okay, is there any debate on that? Tempting, but you're going to resist the temptation. Very good. Right. Online, I see no. In fact, I see they've already voted. So right, okay, you've resisted the temptation. So good. Let's vote. I think we're all done. Okay, thank you, councillors. That takes us to the end of the meeting. Really appreciate all your attention there and the good questions that were asked. And we're going to conclude with the final karakia. Should we stand? Yeah, come on. Right. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia ki te uru tapanui. Kia wātia, kia mama, te nikau, te tinana, te wairua. E te ara takatu. Roe rā e rongo. Whakaria aki ke ronga. Kia wātia, ai rā, kua wātia. Thank you, everyone.